Any updates on Etu?
Yeah, he's going to be fine. Yeah, we've got some guys off that we can really heal up right now, and they'll still get time on the ice.
Looking at yesterday, that's probably the last real day off for these guys until this is all said and done. Did you give them a message on the way out, just how to spend it, maybe shutting off, anything like that?
Well, it's a day off, but you got to work hard to recover. It's not laying on your couch all day, and they've got to. These guys are good about that stuff. These guys are all dialed in that, so they've got a program of things they need to kind of accomplish. They just didn't have to come to the rink. That's the difference. And we've tried to we couldn't really get one off between Boston and Toronto, so got one off there before Carolina. So this is our last day off.
Paul, I know he's not the only guy in the room that's won a cup, but what has the value of Patrick Hornquist been to this group in the role that he's had to play, and the fact that he's still one of the hardest working guys on the ice and all that?
Just that. Well, there's just a bunch of different areas. One is he has this joy about being at the rink every day, even when things were tough here. The fact that he's won 2 Stanley Cups matters because he's doesn't take the game for granted, works as hard today as he did the first day of camp. But beyond that, beyond being a great guy around, there's been a benefit here. We've had a whole bunch of guys banged up this year, and there's a return to play, so we have a group of medical people that will hand off to there's that handoff between coaches when you can start pushing a guy. And you always get to that point, okay, he's ready to start getting banged on. He can start going to a guy in the corner. But in those 3 or 4 days, you worry about a guy's conditioning when he comes back. He just gets to skate with Patrick. And if you can skate with him, you're good. And if, you think you're just going to go out and have a light day, Patrick's not going to allow that to happen. So he's half doctor, half coach, certainly bar setter for the ability to come back and play. Then you come off the bench on any one of these games you won. I mean, he's just so happy for the guys, right? He's in on all the meetings. He's got ideas. He's been there, especially there's just not a lot of people that get to the finals ever. There's just, even if a guy's got 2 or 3 Stanley Cups, he usually doesn't have 9 trips to the Cup final. So he's got insight into what changes between round 3 and round 4.
Not every guy would handle this the way that he has. I mean, maybe and you don't see this in a lot of other sports, maybe more so in hockey, but just what's that say about the character that he was dealt a difficult hand and has chosen to play it this way?
It is all driven from a love of the game, a love of being around. So he knew, we all knew when he got to post-concussion there that the risk then of another one was way too high. The potential cost for the rest of his life was way too high. You know what? And you find with players, even certainly not the extreme point when their careers possibly have come to an end, a major injury, they always go through some sort of depression. And you just didn't see that in him. He wasn't relieved. He wasn't happy that it was over, but he knew that at that point that it was over. But he didn't want to be a distraction early on. So he just kind of molded into this role with us, and he's been great at it. He sees the game in a unique way that he can articulate what's happening on the ice. I had one, I'm not going to use his name, but I had a captain who was a really good player who toward the end of his career says, you probably should start showing me more video because the puck drops and I really don't know what happens. It was true based on the way he played. But all energy and compete, and it was a great NHL pro. Patrick can come off the ice and tell you exactly what happened, where everybody was. Grab a young guy and say, change your angle coming down that wall. That guy will always turn to the inside. He has that gift, and he will be able to take his work ethic and then take his insight to the game and apply it wherever he wants, whether it's coaching or managing or developing or scouting, whatever he decides he wants to do. I do believe that he will be a lifer in the game. He's going to be able to pick what he wants to do.
Mo, just one and then a follow-up. But other than like Berkey trading to draft the Sedin twins, and you use the word unique, how unique is it that on your team you have Ekblad and Bennett and Reinhart, 3 guys that were the top 4 picks in the same draft?
And then each one of them such a completely different experience off that draft, right? I don't know what the stat is now, and I'm old again, but I remember hearing at one point only a third of first-round picks ever end up playing 100 games or more. So if you take that stat to draft day, and 32, and everybody, let's say we had a first-round pick. So all 32 kids get drafted. Every one of them is playing 16 years. Just ask their parents, their agents. Like, it is so hard to be good in this league and to last and survive. Each one of them different paths. Each one of them, I would say now, absolutely worthy of the place that they were picked. Right? They're all elite players in this game.
And the follow-up would be, now obviously you've coached in a couple of southern markets, you've coached in a couple of Canadian markets, and obviously it's not Winnipeg where you have the entire street full,
Right.
white out and that, but you've got Charles Barkley talking about your team, you've got Kepka up in the private box with the claret jug. I mean, is it cool to be a Panthers fan right now?
I hope so. I hope they feel that. The game up north is passed down, right? You're cheering from the fans as a 4-year-old because your dad is and your grandfather is. So you learn that passion early. In a southern market, you have to be exposed to it. It is you're building fans, but there will be a 5-year-old, a 35-year-old and a 55-year-old, and there might be 4 generations of a family now that will instantly become fans, and it's all shared memories. That's what fandom all is. It's people sitting around the dinner table and the kids and moms and daughters too, right? So you need events like this. Well, just think of Carolina, right? It was a bit of a grinder there for the start, and we had gotten to the final, and it was okay, and then they won the cup. But even with that, like even in that block of time, it took 10 years, and we were hit and miss in those 10 years. But they had won a cup, we had won a conference, and we had appeared in a conference championship in 2009 in the block. You need some success for it to become then not just one fan in the household. So you got to get 2. Right, you got to get somebody took somebody to a game, and they don't ever forget that. And there comes a time, 15, 20 years later, that you take your kid to a game, and then that's when I think you get generational fans. Fun to be a part of, for sure.
And there's a 7-year-old kid right now in Winnipeg who's becoming a Panther fan, right? I mean, just watching it on TV, it's like, I like that team, and that becomes their lifelong.
Right.
It's just weird how that.
I would say I'm going to count Carolina twice. So I'll say I've worked for 5 teams, but my middle kid had a San Jose Shark sweater for years in the house because it was a shark, right? Loved him. He's got a signed Shark jersey, right, for the longest time. They turn on the TV and they see something exciting. It's that time when they get connected to the game. And, there's a Barkov fan out there now, and there's, a Bobrovsky's fan, regardless of how you pronounce his last name. And, right, that's that exposure, right? And then they come to the game and they make that connection to a player. And we got a cat, which is cool. We got a panther. So we got that going. It's not a shark, but it's a panther. We'll get, pull some people in from around. We get up to those markets, we'll start to see panther sweaters every once in a while.
You didn't like airplanes?
No, oh no. You know what? It's funny. So my wife loved that logo. So we actually had Jets sweaters, T-shirts. I wasn't working at the time. I was between jobs. But all our kids had Jets just because my wife loved the logo.
With you guys waiting on Dallas and Vegas, what's the schedule like for you? I mean, like, do you have? Obviously you have contingency plans if you're flying Monday or whatever, or flying Wednesday.
It's set now for us. When the game ends tonight, one of 2 class is done. In terms of the pre-scout for the team, while it's important, we had a day between Boston and Toronto. So you can get your information across because so much of it is just your own game, reinforcing your own game. There's enough similarities between Vegas, Dallas, and Boston and the teams that we've played that we won't be behind in our pre-scout even if it's not figured out till post Game 7. So that video is all done. When you go back from our games against Vega, there's enough systematically in there to our game against Boston and Toronto. There's enough system similarity in all this that we're not going to be behind it.
Going back to Babavka, I think
Yeah,
was the
something.
pronunciation,
Yeah.
right? obviously people talk a lot in the playoffs about how goalies can really get in a rhythm. I know you don't know anything about goaltending, but
Agreed.
you know the way Bob works. Does that give you like confidence that he can keep this rolling into the playoffs, just knowing what he's like on a day-to-day basis?
So he's got this running routine that he does that is completely regardless of the context, right? He would know what he's doing, whether this was January or it's now. He's got his routine that he follows, and then he's feeling good off that routine. So he runs his, and because he's such a hard worker, he runs his own routine in a lot of ways, right? He's in early, he's out late, he'll do all the things that he needs to do. And he doesn't have to go out and explore and find new things to add to his game now. And there's no superstition to what he's doing. He just works his butt off every day, and he'll come to the rink and play when he needs to.
I got one kind of dumb one also. After when Keith Kachuk came up in the post game with Barkov and Matthew, Barkov, I'm sure it was a joke, but said like he's the reason we're here.
Yes.
Now that that's months ago or whatever, did that resonate in the locker room? Do you think? Like, did guys really
No,
hear
I
that?
don't-
Did they pay attention to that? Because the run did start there.
Yeah, I
not to
think-
give him too much credit.
The joke in the room was I got to pick a better word. It had a tremendous impact on our season 25 years ago. And then basically it's been Mrs. Kachuk after that. So
Hey, Paul.
just go slow on that one. All right.
Tough to follow that. How have you seen Carter Verhaeghe's game evolve since you got here?
Well, he is a guy that you can easily find on their playoff video the last 2 years. For me, he was their best player in the playoffs last year, the best forward they had in terms of being dynamic, being on the pocket, playing a real good playoff game. All of the things, if you score 40, phenomenal year. But all of the things that are quiet defensive things. So he's a much better hockey player now than he was, I think, at the start of this year, because he just added a whole bunch of things. And that wasn't stuff the coaches had to bring to him. He wanted to learn every day. Like he asked for it. He asked for video. I want to get better in my own end. I want to learn how to pick up pucks off the wall. He wants to understand the game better, because he understands that he's playing with Barkov where he was playing with Bennett. You're playing big minutes against the other team's best, and to, the goal for him was, I want to be on the ice at the end of the game when the goalie's out. Makes sense. And then you'll say, well, you didn't have him on the ice, but Luosterainen comes in, so we have other players that's what they do for a living. But he put an awful lot of effort into becoming a better defensive player, which can be unusual for shooters, because they're usually, if I got 40, how can I get 60? Right? How can I create more, generate more? That's their slant on the game. And he took it from the other way. I want to be a better player. I think it's a function of how he got in the league. Right? So a goal scorer that comes in, if you're not scoring, if you score 50 goals in a year, you probably get 10 doubles. So you're going to score in 40 games, which would be a huge number. That means 42 games you don't score. What do you do? But when you come into the league, you get on the ice, I got to score today to get in the lineup the next night. If I don't score, there's a chance I might not be in the league. So you get all focused on scoring goals, and then you never develop the other part of the game. And he values the other part of the game. He's worked at it.
It seemed like Gus Forsling was all over the place in that series against Carolina, and he was involved in a lot of those plays where it goes the other way, and all of a sudden the game's a completely different way. I mean, how important was he in that Eastern Conference Final?
I just think that you have to, because he and Aaron run against the other team's best, and in all of those finals, and I'm also, those first two, there's some high-end elite world-class producers, big number guys. But he and Aaron play against the other team's best. That's the hard match most nights in all of the games. If your best doesn't shut their best down, you lose.
Coach, you talked a little bit earlier about getting the fans out here, fans supporting this team a little bit more. What's life been like for you the last few days in the community? Like, have you noticed more people just – because you see more flags on cars and stuff and everyone talking more about the Panthers. Have you noticed more people, like, congratulating you when you go to Publix or take your garbage out?
So that doesn't happen much at my house. The life in the playoffs is you're at the rink or you're sleeping or you're watching hockey at home. You're just not out in the I just know that the people that you do know, that you run across, and a lot of them are the people that work here, right? The security guards, everybody is having their own playoff run experience, right? Their neighbors are excited about the Panthers because they know you work there. And those are like the great stories, right? The number of people who, I know somebody that's baked a cake every game day since the start of the playoffs. And no, I mean, that's a lot of cake, right? But there's a million of those stories. Your own family, right? So I got two brothers. So my younger brother lives at where my parents are, so that's where they watch the games. My older brother's got two kind of grown-up kids. They come back to the house to watch the game, and they have their game day routines. Everybody's, the number of superstitions for all the teams left, like worldwide, is like in the millions. Everybody's got their thing going on. And that's the best part of it, because when you call home, you get to hear those stories, and it is in this community. I'm just park underground and I park in the garage. So that's, I get gassed. I haven't been outside much yet to get around.